Alder Madison,
Here.
Alder Evers,
Here.
Alder Rummel.
Present.
Here you have quorum.
Thank you. All right. So I've been notified that the registrants here under item 1 are actually both here for item 13. So we will wait to hear from them until that item. So are there any disclosures or recusals on today's agenda? Seeing none, then we'll move on to, Alder Evers.
Again, discussions regarding Bree Stevens. I have done shows in the past. Bree Stevens, I may in the future, but it will not affect my vote.
Thank you, Alder. Any other disclosures or recusals? If not, then we'll go on to the consent agenda. We have speakers on item 13. Somebody available to answer questions on items 10 and 11 if you have them. And we have item 17 as a discussion item. Are there other items that alders would like to have excluded from the consent agenda? Alder Rummel.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, everyone. I would like to exclude item number 2 for some questions. Item number 9 for an update. And I guess I do have questions, if only to thank staff on 10 and 11. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. Please separate agenda item number 16 for questions.
Will do.
Thank you.
Any other items that alders would like to have separated from the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, then separations will include items 2, 9, 10, 11, 13, 16, and 17. And then can I get a motion on the balance of the agenda, please?
Motion to adopt.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adopt the consent agenda. Questions, discussion, any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of the consent agenda. And that'll take us first then to item 2, which is Legistar 83052, authorizing a non-competitive selection contract with Capital Underground Incorporated for water main leak repair and excavation services. On item 2, motion, please. Anybody can make a motion.
Motion to approve.
Thank
Second.
you. Moved and seconded to approve. Alder Rummel, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. I didn't make a motion because I don't even know what I'm approving exactly. So, but I see Adam is here. Thank you for showing up today. My basic question is, well, 2 really is like, don't recall ever seeing anything quite like this, where an agency with lots of qualified staff has sort of this contingency contract to hire a contractor to help. And maybe there's other examples of that I'm just not familiar with. And also, I guess, a general overview of why you think this is necessary and what are some of the obstacles you face and that you decided to go down this route. Thanks.
Adam?
Sure. Yeah, thanks for the question. This is like you interpreted, just kind of supplemental services for the rare event that water utility operation crews are booked on either scheduled work or other water main breaks in the event we get into a situation where we're short-staffed or have limited crew availability. It gives us an option to have basically an on-call contractor who's available to perform maybe water main break repairs or supplemental like excavation services. So we haven't had a definitive need for something like this, but we've had situations where we've had close calls where all of our available crews had been occupied with work, and if there would have been one more event, we would have been in a bind. A lot of municipalities smaller than Madison have similar contracts where they may not have their own field staff that can perform these type of services. But even given the water utility size, we generally only have 3 or 4 full crews available to perform these type of duties. We've been ramping up our water main rehabilitation and pipelining program over the last few years, and that's been a great benefit to the community and to the utility. It's been a very economically beneficial program for us, but one of the caveats as we get more involved in these water main lining projects, they may occupy 2 or sometimes 3 of our crews during some of the more time sensitive components of those projects, which leaves us with only 1 or 2 crews for emergency situations. So what we did, just as a kind of a precautionary measure, is we structured this contract like similar outside third-party services like we have for utility locating services or patching services. This is just kind of an on-call competitive rates for a third-party crew to come in and give us assistance should we need that. We don't have any specific events lined up, but it's just kind of an on-call service in the event we get into a bind.
Thank you. That helps me understand. One kind of bigger question. I know when I was sort of midway in my earlier term, anytime we would do a street repair, it was almost automatic that water utility would go participate. And then that changed because of, you all were, getting into debt issues and, for your own budget reconciliation, you stopped doing that. So I'm just wondering if looking at the big picture of like, we have this older system that has needs and sort of how you look forward to a more, the approach to taking like on older infrastructure.
Sure, we make that case every single time we apply for a rate file with the Public Service Commission. So we provide a detailed analysis of the condition of our system, our anticipated condition of the infrastructure, what we think we need to do as far as infrastructure renewal to keep our system ongoing indefinitely. And on the last rate file that was approved by the Public Service Commission, they authorized us, which had not previously existed, they authorized us annual expense depreciation, so basically cash funding of water main replacements to the tune of $5 million per year. And in that rate file, it acknowledges that's a start of our program. It's going to start ramping up with progressive rate file applications. We're going to try to grow that. That represents less than 1% of our system each year, probably closer to about 0.5%. We want to move towards maybe targeting about 1% of renewal or replacement on our system each year. So over the next subsequent rate file applications, we're going to request to increase that amount so we can have a stronger participation level in these road reconstruction projects. But compared to a few years ago when we were trying to remediate the immediate debt issues, this is a significant improvement in the ability of our participation on these type of road projects. but it's still a relatively limiting balance for us to participate in all the opportunities out there that need water main replacement. So it's a large effort in prioritization right now, and we continue to lead that case with the Public Service Commission and strike a balance between an acceptable level for our ratepayers as well as maintaining our system renewal objectives.
Thank you very much, Adam. That's very helpful. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Verveer.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Adam. I was curious if you had an opportunity to meet and confer with the local 6,000 Employee Association on this initiative.
As far as I'm aware, there was not any meetings that occurred in that regard. We did initially submit a request for bids back in February and reached out to all the contractors locally that we've worked with, had very limited response. At the previous 2 contractor and developer meetings, we made an announcement of our intent to produce this RFP and had some interest from contractors locally, but it was not something that was discussed locally with local 6,000 representatives, as far as I know.
Do you have any idea if the frontline employees are aware of this initiative? And if they have shared any feedback with you or Krishna or others?
We struggled to even find one contractor willing to even bid on this. And I don't know that we've heard anything locally from any sort of municipal employees that may have had any interest in this. To be perfectly honest, we had a tough time gathering any interest in this.
Yeah, I read that in the memo on the background information from Pete. So I appreciate all that. Maybe I'm not articulating this very well. My question is about your colleagues at Water Utility that currently do the work, whether it be scheduled or emergency water main break, on-call work. Do you think any of them have any concerns about us possibly contracting out a little of their work? That's what I was getting. It wasn't, do any city employees want to do this on moonlight when they're off the clock? Maybe that's what you thought I was asking.
Yeah,
I was more worried about
heard
the
of any
general issue of
concerns.
privatization, even though admittedly this is a very minor initial step.
Yeah, it was supported by our operations center. I had heard 0 concerns or complaints regarding this endeavor. And I do know it had the support of our operations center, who would host those employees that would do this work. So I'm not sure that there are any concerns. I don't believe there were any meetings specifically regarding this in labor relations, but I apologize. I wasn't directly involved in the assembly of the documents that are before you tonight.
Yeah, no worries. I appreciate your responsiveness. Thanks very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Any other questions on item 2? All right, seeing none, thank you, Adam. It has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion on item 2? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of item 2? Seeing no objection, we'll record that vote. And we'll move on to item 9. Item 9 is Legistar 83182, authorizing the execution of a purchase and sale agreement between Starkweather LLC and the City of Madison for the disposal of city-owned vacant land located at 3614 Milwaukee Street. On item 9, a motion, please.
Move approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Moved and seconded to approve item 9. Alder Rummel, you have questions?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm just so happy to see this sort of appearing in our the this project coming back on board, I guess is the short, what I'm trying to say. And I'm not at all concerned about this purchase and sale, but it's sort of a parcel that, it's not really, it didn't occur to me that this would come to play. And I'm just wondering if, I mean, it's just sort of like an update on the overall project, not necessarily this aspect, if that's appropriate, Mayor. I just, I know there are other things coming up on our agenda soon, and if someone's here that could speak to the things that we can expect to see, I would really appreciate it.
Matt, you want to give it a try? It's maybe more of a planning question than for you, but
Yeah, happy to, Mayor, unless someone else from planning is on. I didn't see, but I'm happy to kind of talk about the next steps.
Yeah.
So thank you, Alder Rummel. As you know, what's before you this evening is the purchase and sale agreement to sell a piece of property that the Parks Department currently owns to Starkweather Group to allow them to move forward with their project. You may notice within that purchase and sale agreement that there are a number of contingencies that would have to occur for this sale to move forward. And in many respects, those contingencies also are the next steps in the process. The Starkweather Group will need to come forward and they will need to have a new final plat for their proposed project approved. And so that'll be coming before Plan Commission later this year. They'll need to receive any remaining zoning and planning approvals. And I apologize, I can't speak to a lot of the detail there, but they'll also be working on that over the next several months. They'll need to finalize the purchase of the property, of the Voigt Farm property from the Voigt family. And they also are currently in early conversations regarding possible tax increment finance assistance for the project. And they're also in early conversations with city engineering regarding infrastructure investments that will need to be made to help facilitate their project. So all those items are going to be moving forward over the next, really for the balance of 2024, to hopefully get to a point where the project can proceed.
Thank you, Matt. It's such exciting news. This has been a project of interest to the Near East Side for at least 2 generations. So I'm happy to see hopefully the right team in place to move it forward. Thank you. Thanks, Mayor.
thank you, Alder. Any other questions on item 9? If not, it's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? If not, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of item 9? Seeing no objection, we'll record a unanimous vote in favor of item 9. Suggest that we take up items 10 and 11 together. 10 is 83201, authorizing an assignment and assumption of the City of Madison Affordable Housing Fund loans, originally made to Heartland Housing by Scenair Solutions. And item 11 is Legistar 83208, authorizing a grant to Scenair Solutions to be drawn from American Rescue Plan Act funds to acquire and rehab properties at 715 Rethke and 7933 Tree Lane. On items 10 and 11, can I get a motion?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve 10 and 11. We do have with us Chris Laurent from Scenair if there are questions for him. So let's start there. Are there any questions for the registrant? Alder Rummel?
Yes, I do have a question.
All right.
A soft question. I want to disclose I've known Chris and served on committees with him and appreciate the work he's done over how long you've been with Scenair. And I'm wondering what made you all decide to take up this project that has caused us such stress and worry. And appreciate that you have.
Yeah,
Hi,
I was asked the
Chris.
same. Yeah, hi. I was asked the same question. I guess they've gone through a lot of people. It's kind of what we do. I think we came to the conclusion, if not us, who? It's really that simple. I think there could also be, we're doing some work right now in Detroit and Indianapolis where we just don't stop with our developments. I've got some colleagues who are just really wired for service. So we just got $1 million grants for 2 properties outside of Indianapolis to provide psychological services for veterans. So I think we can. I think I'm trying to set the bar at realistic expectations. I hope we can exceed those.
One follow-up question, Chris. So in the memo that our staff and Jim prepared, there's some changes that we're expecting. They're going to have less permanent supportive housing and less project-based vouchers at Tree Lane. And I'm wondering how you come to conclude like this is what the right balance is to maintain services and quality housing and safe housing.
Yeah, I think we tried to listen to all the stakeholders, City of Madison County, to a certain extent, WEDA, and I think we're trying to hit a balance that we feel we can be successful at. And this is Madison, so there's still sort of people second or third or fourth guessing that. Our intention really is to start, rehoming people who don't have really acute needs and establish community first, and then layer in people with more in that housing first continuum. One of the first things that we did though was we really want to start with a solid plan. So we're continuing to start with folks from the broad perspective to figure out what worked and what didn't work. That plan is probably 80% complete. I will say, I'm going to steal your thunder, Alder, because I know you're going to say it too. City staff has been really sort of like the height of what we'd hope a public-private partnership could be. Jim and Lynette in particular have been at the table, have given us honest feedback. And when you start with transparency and honesty, you can get things done. So I think that third at Tree Lane, recognizing the fact that at one point we had 175 kids living in 47 apartments, making sure that there's stuff for the youth to do. So we're trying to have a multifaceted plan that addresses the multiple needs that we'll have in Tree Lane. And then I think for Rethke, our understanding really is that property management failed, and that was sort of the first thing to fail historically. And Tellurian's provided pretty adequate services, but again, I think we have a meeting tomorrow or the day after that with Tellurian to really solidify that.
Thank you. I did hear from my one friend who works there who was very happy that it was Senior that was selected. So congratulations from someone on the ground.
Yeah, no, thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Harrington McKinney, you have questions for the registrant?
Yes, I do. Thank you very much. Mine is around your property management. Will there be on-site property management to address what tenant needs might come up?
There will. Yeah, Lutheran Social Services is a group. Their coverage area is Wisconsin and Minnesota. Upper Michigan. And so they've handled the properties, both properties through receivership. We're also working with them. We have a scattered site housing development in Milwaukee. We're working in combination with actually 2, and then just broke ground on a development in La Crosse. So I think more than anything else, there's sort of commonality of intent and purpose. And again, real transparent, honest conversations about what works and what doesn't work. So we're comfortable with them going forward. We're keeping a close eye on capacity. And I think their intent is to really, once we sort of get our capital together, start hiring the best people that they can afford to within the budget to make sure that people are served.
Okay, Madam Mayor, may I have one follow-up question?
Go ahead, Alder.
Okay, I just lost my follow-up question. Oh, the follow-up question is that in terms, and you said that you've been working very closely with Jim and Lynette, how often will you be reporting back the successes and the involvement, the successes and challenges that will be at Tree Lane?
Well, so I think one of our value propositions is we are literally.
Hear how often
Yeah.
that feedback would be, that
Yeah, yeah.
turnaround feedback.
Yeah, thank you for that. So I think one of our value propositions is we are literally right across the street. Our offices are at 10 East Doty. And so we've sort of alternated meeting locations at either City Hall or our offices. I think the scheduled meetings, there's sort of a normal feedback loop, but it's either every 2 weeks or once a month. So our intention is to continue, drawing on them as resources as long as they're willing to keep showing up.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm complete.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Madison?
Thank you, Mayor. I just have one quick question around engaging with the tenants who are currently still there, like as new tenants are moving into the building, how involved or engaged are the old tenants who've been there for a while and sort of like helping to set the tone going forward, or just being involved in, just how resources are allocated, decision-making on the property, those sort of things.
Yeah, we've had, I'll call it strategic conversation. So right now we are an interested party purchasing the property, and we don't yet, though, expect to very quickly have, all the resources, money that we need to make that happen. We'll probably talk about that this week. That was very important to some, one particular county commissioner or county supervisor. So I'll tell you, it kind of indirectly answers your question, that the county has a tenancy rider that I took the liberty of rewriting, I think, with a much more respectful tone. So it's one of the requirements the county has for its money, recognizing that a lot of the folks who are struggling right now have suffered and they need healing, I think, before anything else can be offered. So I think folks have a sense of how we're planning to approach this and when the time is right, which I would expect would be, if everything falls into place, we'll close in 2 weeks. And so I would hope that before that point of time, we'd have a conversation with the residents just so they know what's expected. Right now, though, they were sort of on track to have about somewhere between 2 and 4 families at each of Rethke and Tree Lane. So we're not talking about a whole lot of folks. Most of the folks have found alternative housing.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep, you bet.
Thank you, Alder. Any other questions for Chris? If not, Chris, let me just say thank you and appreciate your partnership here. I just want the committee to know that, and Chris referenced this, that there have been extensive and I think very frank conversations with Senair, and I really appreciate their partnership. Appreciate them being willing to step in and help us with this situation. And I think that we've learned a lot of things since the beginning of these properties, and my sense is that Senair has been very much willing to learn from our experience and what's worked and what hasn't, perhaps more importantly. And so I'm very appreciative and very much looking forward to their partnership going forward.
Thank you.
All right, so we'll move on then to questions for staff, if there are any. Alder Rummel, I'll come back to you first.
Well, I just want to thank Jim and Lynette for the work they've been doing. I don't really have a question, but wanted the opportunity to appreciate their work and helping put this together. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any other questions for staff? We do have both Jim and Lynette here. If not, then it's been moved and seconded, both items 10 and 11. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of items 10 and 11? Seeing no objection, we'll record unanimous votes on 10 and 11. And that will take us to item number 13. Item 13 is Legistar 82711, authorizing the Parks Division to submit and, if awarded, accept a grant from the state of Wisconsin for Breese Stevens Field improvements. On item 13, we have one registrant wishing to speak. So we'll start there. Alex Salutis of District 5. We also have Vern Stedman available for questions. Alex?
Thank you, Mayor. Just want to check my microphone's working.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, if you can give me a heads up when I have maybe 30 seconds left, I'd appreciate it.
Yep.
Bree Stevens Field is a cherished community asset. Maintaining its vitality is essential. However, the current proposal raises significant concerns about financial transparency, the equitable use of public funds, and the benefit to private enterprises at the expense of taxpayers. Before investing additional public funds in Bree Stevens Field, this proposal should be referred to a future meeting and until such time that the city has a complete and thorough accounting of the revenue and expenses for the stadium, a long-term capital plan for the stadium, and more detailed information on this more detailed information on this proposal and a nonpartisan analysis of the pros and cons of the proposal. That they've developed a policy on the use of city property by for-profit enterprises that's open, transparent, and equitable, and that rental rates are based on the value to the user. They've created a special committee or task force who are with subject matter expertise in the management and operation of sports and music venues to assist with the development of policies on the use of city property by for-profit enterprises, how to value user agreements like this, and how to negotiate equitable user agreements that are a win-win for the city and users. Utilize consultants as appropriate that are subject matter experts in sports and music venues to help equitably value and negotiate use agreements like this, and created a sinking fund for maintenance and improvements that is funded by a reasonable and equitable user fee that is added to the cost of tickets. The issue isn't who should pay for maintenance and improvements, but the issue isn't paying for maintenance and improvements, but who pays for them and how they're paid for and what's equitable. From 2015 to 2018, the city's net rental fee after adjustments for the number of concerts and improvements paid for by Big Top is approximately $369,000 or $26,400 a year. This is notably, this is less than what a concert promoter would typically pay for a single concert at a single venue.
There's about 30 seconds left.
Thank you. We have a $27 million structural deficit in 2025 looming, which will more than double to $60 million in 2029. Subsidizing these type of for-profit enterprises and borrowing $2 million for improvements, which will add to the deficit, isn't necessary when users can pay for it. These steps are crucial to safeguard public funds and
Mayor, that's time.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Other questions for Alex? Note that you should have in your inboxes Alex's letter, which has much of the same content. All right, seeing none, are there questions for our other registrant, Vern Stedman, representing Big Top? If not, are there questions for staff, Alder Rummel?
I was late on the Vern Stenman question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Hi, Vern. Thanks for also showing up today. Can you help us understand some of the things that going forward with the proposal for the new soccer league, what changes are needed, and then how, and if you can speak at the high level, our relationships with each other and how those are adjudicated, you know, with, I guess you know what I'm getting at, so I'll stop there. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for the question and for the time here tonight. So basically, to bring the women's soccer team to Bree Stevens Field, we need investments in infrastructure, including gender appropriate locker rooms, additional locker room space, additional seating, field replacement of our artificial turf surface, and a pretty significant investment in historic preservation of the facility, and some deferred maintenance issues as well. As far as our relationship goes with the city, we've had a long-term relationship, at Bree Stevens Field. And the city has made investments into improvements at the facility, and we have also made significant investments into improvements at the facility at our own expense. We do receive a rental credit for the approved improvements that we make to the facility, and that is part of the reason that our rent is at the level that it currently is at, is that when we make investments that are approved by the city into the facility, we do receive some capital improvement credits against our annual rent fee.
And when was the most recent renewal of negotiations on your, the lease or whatever, I guess it is?
Yeah, the use agreement was renewed to start our men's soccer team in 2019, and that's the agreement that we're currently operating under.
So are you undergoing, I guess we'll ask park staff this, but are you in the middle of a renegotiation with the upcoming women's soccer?
I think that's coming, hopefully. I think that we have some big facility questions that we need to figure out first, to figure out how we can fund the improvements that would be required to bring the women's soccer team to the facility. And I think that's kind of the first question that needs to get answered. And then the questions regarding the renegotiation of the use agreement would come as we start to kind of narrow down the funding plan for the overall improvement.
And so just one final question. Are you, as Big Top, seeking funds to also throw into the pot of money here?
Yeah, we anticipate that any project, any final deal would include a contribution from our company into the facility.
Thanks. I'll pass it along if others have questions. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Evers.
Thanks, Mayor. Following up with Alder Rummel, Vern, could you elaborate a little bit more about what kind of contribution you anticipate Big Top making if there's $8 million allocated from this grant and then foreign matching funds from the city? Have you, in any negotiations with park staff or city staff, have you committed a specific number, or are you willing to commit a specific number? And is it matching? Do you anticipate some number that Big Top would contribute to the conclusion of this project?
Yeah, I guess.
Vern, let me try just to set the stage for Alders. The estimated total cost of, if we really did everything that we wanted to do, is in the range of 30+ million. So we're barely scratching the surface here of the basic items that really need to be done to the stadium, sort of regardless, and that are clearly the city's responsibility. Right? That's the investment that we're hoping to get some money from the state to basically supplant what the city might have to put in. There's a whole separate conversation about what Big Top might put in for the improvements that would be needed to expand the use of the stadium. And it is at, several tens of millions of dollars higher than what we're looking at here.
Well, I'll repeat my question. Vern, could you just talk a little bit more about what Big Top is prepared to put in? Thank you.
And certainly, Alder, it is too early to get into a specific number that we would be contributing to the project. There's a lot of different potential funding mechanisms that are out there. This grant is coming up right now because there's a deadline for the pursuit of the grant. And to kind of echo what the mayor said, this is just one part of an overall funding plan. And we have a lot of work to still do. The hope is that this is the first step, and this is kind of a foundation for us to build the entire funding plan around. And it makes it more likely that we're able to get to the final goal. But I do not have a specific dollar amount. I do know that one element will be an increase in our annual rental fee for the use of the facility. That's certainly going to be one part that we anticipate. And other than that, I think I'd be a little premature in getting into a specific number, because there hasn't honestly to this point been a conversation outlining exactly where that number needs to be. We're trying to figure out what the gap is first.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Other questions for the registrant? If not, thank you, Vern. All right.
Thank you.
On item 13, let's get a motion, please.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. There are questions for staff on item 13. Alder Verveer?
Thank you, Mayor. I have a simple request of park staff, and I see that the superintendent and assistant superintendents are all with us. And that is, could you please share with the council a written document that explains both the wish list for Bree Stevens capital improvements, as well as what we think the $4 million from the state and the matching money from the city would provide, not to mention what Big Top might provide. So for example, and I see CJ, you turned your camera on first. Maybe one question I could ask you directly is, what is the application deadline for the state contract? And maybe just sharing the completed application with policymakers would be helpful.
Sure. The deadline for the grant has actually passed, so this is retroactive authorization to apply it. The deadline was at the end of January. This is a new grant program from the state, so we jumped in to apply. Obviously, the application will be withdrawn if we don't have council authorization. But in that grant application, we identified a few things, including the turf replacement that the mayor mentioned, increase in the number of seats in the stadium, improving the locker rooms, and improving the facilities for concerts. One of the things we wanted to make clear to the state is that these improvements will be made not only as a way to attract professional women's soccer and other women's teams that may be interested in playing here by having improving the locker rooms, but really any higher level sports team would be interested in these, in these improved, in the improved stadium. We are hopeful and working towards getting women's soccer here, but we know that whether or not women's soccer gets here or another team wants to play here, we're going to need to make some improvements. But to answer your question, yes, I'm happy to share a list of improvements and what they may cost and other information about it.
I appreciate that. Yeah, thank you very much, CJ. It would be great if you could also upload it to this legislative file.
Certainly.
As well, for everybody to benefit as that's toward the council meeting next week. But you say initially you could share the app. I don't want you to do all sorts of extra work as part of this request for me. You're saying the application's already been submitted to the state, and that does have fairly detailed information in it. So that would be helpful to us to see.
I can share that with you, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. And my apologies. I didn't realize that the application wasn't attached in Legistar. Alder Figueroa Cole, questions?
Thank you, Mayor. CJ, can you please explain, can you give us an overview of the actual resolution ask? And what is the actual value, the matching funds, and where the city's matching funds are coming from?
Yes. So the resolution is requesting authorization to apply for the grant and accept a grant award of $4 million if approved by the state, and then authorization to enter into the contract for that grant. It is also requesting authorization to amend the budget in order for us to fund the $4 million match to the requested grant. Those $4 million come from $200,000 in existing capital budget authorization in the 2024 Parks adopted capital budget. It includes $1.8 million in park impact fees, of which $1.3 million come from the citywide district and $500,000 come from the North District. There's also $200,000 that we are requesting initially come from issued GEO bonds, but then we'll be requesting an amendment in the TID 36 project plan so that those funds are, the TIF funds are used for that $2 million. So that is the overview of the resolution request and the budget pieces. And if you had an additional question there, if you could repeat it, please.
So the other question is also, can you explain why are we putting this resolution forward on the context of this is a plan in order to file an application, not a plan already project that is going to be happening, but we're in planning stages. Can you explain that, please?
Yeah, so the request for the grant may come back. We hope that it comes back and says, here's $4 million to match your $4 million, and here's $8 million of a project that you can go forward with, in which case we still need to go through the full planning process for exactly what that $8 million would entail and go through the public engagement and public approval process for that project. The risk here is that the state may come back and say, well, your application warrants a $2 million grant, in which case we would have a $4 million project to put together, which would look very different. And so it would be at that point that we come up with go through all of the schematic design and design development phases that we would need to do for that project. So that's the strategy with the timing, why we aren't going to the state with exactly what the improvements are.
And finally, if we did not apply for this grant or we let it go, the repairs still need to happen. So then we will need to use city funding to get that accomplished. Is that accurate?
Yes, and the priority things that need to happen include the turf replacement, which is at the end of its life. It was replaced in 2014. Turf lasts about 10 years. It needs to be replaced regardless, and the historic preservation and renovations need to take place in order to take good care of what is a well-loved and city-owned asset.
Thank you. That's all I got for now.
Thank you, Alder. Alder Rummel, questions for staff?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Matt Mikolajewski. Since he is our expert or my expert on TID 36, I'm hearing from some constituents who are like, well, we could use this money for affordable housing. Why are we doing, investing in Breeze Stevens Field and, those kind of bigger questions. So can you talk a little bit about like how we've invested in the past and some of the ways we've used this TID 36 money in the project plan just to give us a higher level look?
Sure, happy to. So in terms of the question around, this money could be used for affordable housing, the answer is yes, that is a possibility. However, we have not, as of late, had an application for affordable housing using HF or TIF within the boundary of TID 36. So, we have used TID 36 to fund housing in the past. Some of that housing has had an affordable component, and it is something that we could certainly consider, but we don't have one of those before us to react to at the moment. We've used TID 36 funding for infrastructure improvements, including improvements to Bree Stevens Field in the past. And this is really in keeping with what we've done in the past. In fact, the AstroTurf that was installed in 2014 used TID 36 funding, and this would now potentially help replace that turf again. So we've used, again, funding for housing, funding for infrastructure, funding for Bree Stevens Field in the past out of this TID, and if we are successful in securing this grant, it's a way that we can match that grant funding with TID dollars.
A follow-up question, and I don't mean to put you on the spot, but do we have any sense of what all the improvements to Bree Stevens has generated since we underwent trying to make it a more usable facility?
That would probably be better for parks, given that they handle more of the revenue that they receive from Big Top and all the events that happen there.
I was thinking more of the economic development of the whole corridors and how the Bree Stevens fits into that.
Oh, sure. I mean, we have not done a study to quantify that directly. However, for those of us that have been in Madison for a while, if you go back 15, 20 years, that was a pretty sleepy corridor. And we see now, events occurring on a regular basis at Bree Stevens Field that are bringing people in to frequent all of the restaurants that are not only on the East Washington corridor, but the adjacent Tenny Lapham and Willie Street neighborhoods. We see the hotels that have opened up along East Washington Avenue, with another just opening now, and all the additional housing development that has happened without city support. And that's, I think, really telling of some of the success that we have. Developers now investing in housing, investing in hotels without any city financial support. So clearly, Bree Stevens Field as a destination facility within the neighborhood has helped make that a reality.
Oh, this is kind of coming out of nowhere, Matt, but when you talked about the new hotels, which just keep coming to my amazement, and the room tax, is there any way that we could go through that process and ask for room tax help with Bree Stevens, or is that too big of a lift because of the competition and all the other people who want to use that money?
I only know enough to be dangerous in responding regarding room tax, so I think I would defer to Mr. Schmidtke on that.
Thank you.
Alder Rummel, thanks for your question. Just as a reminder, room tax and its use is defined under state law. And so 70% of revenues have to be used for tourism-related activities. 30% can be used for city general fund activities. And I think, as you kind of touched on in your question, the amount for tourism-related activities is, sort of fully budgeted, and looking out into the future, that funding is, already committed to things like the Destination Madison marketing activities, to Overture, to support operations of Monona Terrace, and things like that.
Thank you. It was just an idea. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Alder. Other questions for staff on item 13? If not, item 13 has been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing, Alder Rummel?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Alder Revere's request to get more information on the record, because I do have constituents who have questions, but I think I'm a sponsor of this, and I think overall, this is a historic building that we need to take care of as stewards of this building. And as the council president noted, we'll still have these requirements to invest and keep up maintenance with Bree Stevens. So I hope and urge you and the rest of the council to support. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Any further discussion on item 13? Seeing none, it's been moved and seconded. Is there objection to recording a unanimous vote in favor of item 13? Seeing no objection, I'll record that vote. That will take us to item 16, which is Legistar 83219, amending the Fleet Division 2024 capital budget regarding fire apparatus and rescue vehicle replacement program to order a fourth ambulance. On item 16, can I get a motion, please?
Motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve item 16. Alder Revere, you had questions on item 16?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor. And I thank the chief and Rachel for both being here. My first question, Chief, is I remember that there was a awful ambulance crash involving Sun Prairie EMS on John Olin Drive late last year, but I hadn't heard anything at all about our own total loss of an ambulance. Could you please share the unfortunate background of that?
Sure, happy to. Well, I guess not happy to, but happy to oblige the question. It was April 26th. It was Medic 3. It was involved in an intersection or an accident at the intersection of Park Street and Regent Street late afternoon. It was just an unfortunate situation. They were not ticketed in the incident. The driver of the other vehicle actually was. They were responding with their lights and sirens to a call, following policy, doing everything that they were supposed to do. And unfortunately, 5 of the 6 lanes of traffic stopped. And at the last minute, somebody pulled out and made impact with the passenger side door, as well as the front of the box, if you will, if you think of the square portion on the back of the ambulance. To be quite honest with you, the damage is more significant than we all estimated, and the appraiser formally totaled the ambulance upon review of that and stated that it was not worth repair. So it took us by surprise. Not that we want to chalk any accident up to being mundane, certainly, but the amount of damage, I certainly expected this to be repairable.
Yeah, thank you. I'm surprised there wasn't extensive media coverage of that. Sounds pretty bad.
As was I, and grateful that we were avoided that one anyway.
So there were no significant injuries as a result of the crash?
There were no injuries to our personnel and no injuries to there was a single occupant in the other vehicle and no injuries there either.
That's a blessing.
Absolutely.
Since you articulated that the other party was deemed at fault, at least by the Madison Police Department, is there a possibility of recovery through insurance?
As I said, I'm going to be dangerous at best with this answer, but I've learned a lot working through this incident. It sounds like very few people carry enough insurance to make a meaningful impact on something as expensive as a piece of fire apparatus. And so it sounds like if there is anything, it would just be a minor fraction of the cost of the replacement, but it sounds like that portion is still in the works, and I haven't heard the ultimate resolution.
Risk management's obviously pursuing this.
Yeah, yes, Eric VM is fully involved.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other question I had was just about the current delivery time for ambulances that we're experiencing. And this is a segue, I guess, to our last agenda item as well, with the capital budget requests that have come in for next year. And I noted Fleet's request to move up replacement of a couple of ladders because of the lead time that apparently Pierce is experiencing with supply chain disruptions still or whatnot. Do we have the same, have we experienced same lead time delays with Demir? I assume that we're still using Demirs for ambulance purchases.
Yeah, correct. Thank you for the question. We're still awaiting delivery from our 2022 order for Demirs. And so they are experiencing delays, not as significant as Pierce. And that is actually really the genesis of requesting the additional replacement now. If we were to put off for another year, we could be another year to 2 years on the delivery of that order. So right now, as I said, we're about 2 years out on our previous order from Demirs. They are getting a little bit faster right now. So we're hoping about 1.5 years from order to delivery. Pierce, on the other hand, our latest feedback from them is about 48 to 50 months on delivery from order.
And that's for both engines and ladders, out of curiosity?
Correct.
Interesting. Wow. Out of curiosity, do both manufacturers say it's because of supply chain generally, or labor shortages, or just overwhelming business?
It's really all of that. They say there's a lot of rebound business orders that they can't keep pace with at the end in the recovery from COVID. Labor shortages are a large issue, and then they've got a lot of issue with supply inventory and parts sourcing.
Thank you. And then I guess one last question, Chief, and that is about our reserve ambulances that obviously we see all the time in operation, pretty regular basis on our streets. The resolution obviously speaks to the lack of, I guess, resilience, if you will, and concern that they are not something that's completely reliable as we would like. Could you just speak generally as to the current reserve of the, I guess it's half dozen ambulances that we have in reserve, and what their current conditions are generally? And I presume that Med 3 is permanently using a reserve for the next year, or whenever you receive the 2022 deliveries.
Exactly, Alder. So they'll be riding in a reserve, which takes us from 6 down to 5 available reserves presently. The oldest reserve ambulance is a 2013. We try to keep them frontline for about 3 to 5 years, and then they go into reserve status after that. So the 2013 is high mileage, and as Fleet would tell us, is increasingly difficult to maintain and increasingly expensive to keep in service. We have 3 additional med units that are 2016s, again with high mileage in the reserve status, and then we've got a 2017 and a 2019. As you mentioned, we have 6 reserve ambulances, and really on any given day, we typically, and Rachel can certainly correct me, but typically we have 1 to 2 of them, I would say, at Fleet, either serving acute needs for service or routine maintenance because of the high mileage and usage put on them. And then frequently we have several of them in use for special events and other coverage throughout the city. The example was, an easy example for me to use is a couple of weeks ago with Crazy Legs and Mifflin Street. We had 0 reserve ambulances available because they were either in use or were used for staffing those events.
Yeah, I can see why this resolution is necessary. Thanks for responding to all my questions. I appreciate it. Thank you also, Rachel, for being here. I think the chief covered everything. Unless I saw you turn your camera on, did you have anything you'd like to add at all, Rachel?
I was just coming on in case there was anything that Chief wasn't able to touch on, but I guess I will add, since I'm talking now and camera off, that when these units do come in for service, the average downtime is, anywhere from 1 to 3 days for normal services, and 2 to 4 days if there's any extensive repairs, which of course those reserve med units tend to have bigger repairs that need to happen and longer wait times for any specialty parts that need to come in from Canada.
No, thank you. Well, for those that don't know, Demers is headquartered in Quebec, correct? Canadian company. Is that right, Rachel? Is that why you mentioned Canada?
I believe they are. I'm not sure exactly where in Canada, but somewhere in Canada, yes.
Yeah, and I think they bought out a lot of the American manufacturers, if I understand correctly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thank you both very much. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you,
Alder.
Thank you.
Are there other questions on item 16 for staff? If not, it's been moved and seconded. Is there discussion? Seeing no discussion, is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of item 16? Seeing no objection, record unanimous vote in favor of item 16. Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Rachel. And that'll bring us to item 17, which is Legistar 83292, overview of the 2025 capital budget requests. Dave?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks, everyone. Try to share my screen here. Can everyone see that? All right, super. So 2025 capital budget. and the agency requests came in a few weeks ago, and we'll run through for you over the next few slides what are in those requests. So we'll talk about key dates and a little update on navigating the website. Some of the changes between the 2024 adopted capital budget and capital improvement plan and what is requested by the agency, some highlights by agency, just a look at some borrowing target perspectives, and then a review of or a reminder of upcoming presentations for the Finance Committee related to the 2025 budget. So again, just a reminder on key dates. On the capital side, the kickoff meeting was in March, and the agency requests came in on April 19th. Currently in the midst of agencies briefing the mayor this week, and the mayor will then finalize the executive capital budget over the next few months, with that budget introduced in early September. This committee will meet on September 16th and 17th to hear from the agencies about what is in the executive capital budget for their agencies. And then the Finance Committee amendments will occur on September 30th. And that is just as a reminder, that week before is when the amendments are due in from alders, and are released that Friday before September 30th. You can see the operating budget. I won't go through that in detail. Basically, it follows a month later. The full council has its opportunity to amend the budget the days that you see there. And then the budget's adopted starting in your meetings on November 12th. So navigating the budget website, basically, if you put in city budget in Google, it'll take you there. We update it regularly at each phase. It includes the timeline. You can see a screenshot of that on the right hand of this slide. If you navigate to agency requests and click on that, you can see both the total, one document that has all the agency requests in it, and then you can also see it by agency. When you're reviewing agency requests, they include a summary and analysis. So the request by year with a summary of key changes from 2024 to 2025 that's prepared by the budget team. There's a memo from each agency head describing their priorities and some of the key elements of their budget request. And then capital proposal for each program and project. We used a process this year of short forms, so a little less information for projects and programs with no proposed changes from the 2024 adopted SIP. The longer forms are for changes or new ideas. Again, the screenshot here just shows you that page that has the agency requests with the links to each agency's budget request in PDFs, where you can see the entire document. So that's a little bit about navigating the website, where you can find the information and read up on each agency's capital budget request. So we'll turn to a summary now of those requests. First of all, when we're doing the comparison, we're looking at the 2025 request to the 2024 adopted SIP in those years that overlap. So in this case, it's 2025 through 2029 are the years that what's in the proposals for the 2025 budget overlap with the adopted capital improvement plan from 2024. So in this instance, you can see that in 2024, in those 5 years, the 2024 SIP includes $5 million total. In this example, the total request is $6.25 million. So the difference between what is proposed and what was in the adopted is about $1.25 million. And that's the type of comparison we'll be showing on the next few slides. So when we look at those overlap years for 2025 request, it's about $48 million higher than what's in the adopted SIP. That's all funds. The graph here shows you the sort of darker portion of the left-hand bars are the adopted GO borrowing. The hashed line portions of the bars or columns are the adopted other funding, and then the lighter colored columns are the request, both GO borrowing and other funds. So the total request in 2025, 1.3 billion. It's about 48 million higher than the adopted SIP for the same period. About 31 million of that is GO borrowing. And then in 2030, which is the new year in the capital improvement plan, it adds 236 million of all funds, and about 154 million of that is new borrowing. Within that overall increase, about 31 million is new GO. You can see that by year, basically slightly more in every year except 2029. And then that request is about 4.6% higher than the 2024 adopted SIP. The budget guidance did set a borrowing target, but it did allow for certain scenarios where new funding and projects could be requested. Major GO borrowing increases, there's a little under 12 million added in 2025. These are some examples of some of the larger projects. So engineering, sidewalk program, Troy Drive Railroad Bridge. In fire, there was some movement between years for their training structure at Station 14. Some funding moved up in fleet for fire apparatus and rescue vehicle replacement. And then some TIF funding added for Park Street reconstruction, which is actually connected to the north-south BRT. And then some stormwater GO borrowing. 16 million of GO borrowing is added in 2026. Again, you can see in engineering, major project there is Regent Street. And then some additional funding in information technology, and then some movement upwards or in nearer years on fleet for fire apparatus and rescue equipment. And then Parks has some park facility improvements. Looking at federal and state funding assumptions, really the large increase in 2025 is, or the large amounts there are the north-south bus rapid transit line. There's some increase there. There's also funding for the Triangle redevelopment. And you can see the increase there for the Troy Drive Railroad Bridge. Again, federal increases there. And then, as I mentioned, BRT. The other years are pretty much the same as the 2024 SIP. Some of the major facility requests are in CDA redevelopment, that Triangle redevelopment project. So adding funding to do phases 2 and 3. In facilities, you can see some facility improvements at streets. Fleet is looking for a project around fueling infrastructure. In parks, the Odana Hills Clubhouse renovation and improvements. And then a new facility for traffic engineering and parking operations is proposed by transportation. And you can see here that would be, the idea would be to locate that at the current Streets Badger Road facility as a part of other movements of staff when the Far West facility is built. So now we'll look at this sort of by functional area, where the requests are happening. In the administration area, information technology is the major increase. The mayor's office actually is decreasing GO borrowing in the sustainability area. But IT has an increase of about 4.5 million in GO over the 2025 to 2029. And you can see the areas there in terms of network operations, enterprise business solutions. A lot of this is around both inflation and movement of major systems to the cloud. In planning and development, again, you can see the big increase in CDA is for the triangle redevelopment. Otherwise, there's no changes in the other agencies. In public facilities and public safety, again, no changes in most of the agencies, an increase for police to replace portable radios between 2027 and 2030. And then under Monona Terrace, they do have an increase in 2030, which is not shown in this graph because it's outside that overlap period. But they have building improvements, which include $1 million in elevator repairs that they foresee needing in 2030. Looking at engineering and utilities, again, not a lot of change. Ped Bike is slightly higher. This is some projects along with federal funds and the sidewalk program. Some of that is movement of funding from major streets. You can see a reduction in major streets. And then the other ones are pretty much in line. There is an increase for a fire suppression system at East Sycamore, Streets East Sycamore location. And then there is some funding in major streets for Regent Street, the Park Street South, associated with BRT, and then the High Point Raymond Midtown Road and some timing changes. In the other public works areas, we talked about the fueling infrastructure. There's some movement of funding between years based on lead times and fleet. The Dan Hills Clubhouse, parkland improvements, there is an increase there. And then streets just has some change in their equipment budget. And then the water utility does have some change in funding, which does include funding for some of the Midtown, High Point, Raymond Road projects. Transportation, pretty much everything is the same, again, with the exception of transportation with that TIF borrowing for the North-South BRT. And really that's the Park Street reconstruction, which will serve as a match for that project. And then a new transportation facility to house various transportation agency activities. It's $20 million in the budget for that. The Horizon list, the agencies either made new request proposals or to continue. I won't go through all of these. You can see there are some funding for on the Horizon list for pedestrian bicycle overpasses, some PFAS-free turnout gear for the fire department, and then fueling infrastructure upgrades is also new to the list. Otherwise, projects have been continued that were on the 2024 Horizon list, and you can see that list here. Also just wanted to bring your attention to the carry forward appropriations. We will share that report separately and attach it in Legistar. But this basically just shows projects that have already been approved in prior capital budgets. In each budget, when you adopt the budget, you also approve carrying over that unspent or unissued borrowing associated with those projects into the new budget year. These projects are just sorted by the largest to smallest, and just looks at the top few projects there. But again, the budget already includes the Imagination Center at Rindell Park. So that project is not yet begun. So that borrowing is there. The timing with affordable housing means that funds are authorized, but not the bonding not yet, or debt not yet issued. Facility repairs happening at Metro and You can see the list there of other projects, the permanent homeless shelter for men, some streets projects, and so on. So some considerations in putting together the executive budget, which is mainly focused on what's sustainable level of borrowing. So one of those is looking at the debt service share of the general fund budget. And so one way to look at the size of the capital budget is what should that level be? If it's tried to be maintained at its what was projected to be sort of the highest level under the 2024 SIP, that would be about an 18% debt service as a share of the general fund budget. Getting to that 18% would mean reducing agency requests by about $10 million annually. Now, a lot of that increase, as you saw in the previous graphs, are in the first 3 or so years of the SIP. The request from the agency adds about 31 million of GO borrowing. And there's about 154 million of new GO borrowing added in 2030. So maintaining that 18% would mean a 60% reduction from what's requested. This graph on the right shows where that general fund debt service share would be with a $10 million reduction per year compared to the agency request. You can see it would rise above 19%, but would come back down by 2031 to 18%. The graph on the right just shows maintaining roughly 18%, what the debt service reduction would need to be, and basically how that would play out over the years of the SIP. Just a little bit of background on how the executive budget will be developed. There is a management review team that includes some department heads, finance staff, deputy mayors. It's reviewing some of the major proposals and new proposals, and will be making recommendations to the mayor. The agencies are also meeting with the mayor and the management review team to answer questions about their budget proposals. And then new projects and programs, I should say programs with significant changes, will be thoroughly evaluated around fiscal impact, prudent spending priorities, looking at it through an equity lens and sustainability, as well as readiness to move ahead with the project and the extent to which it's aligned with other plans and strategic plans. So really that goal of balancing priorities with financial considerations and those target borrowing levels. So that's a quick overview of the agency requests in the capital budget. Just a reminder of upcoming presentations. At your meeting on June 10th, this has been changed from the slide I showed you last week, where it mentioned May 28th. We'll have this ready at your June 10th meeting and brief you on the cost to continue updates for 2025, as well as the update on the budget outlook. We'll go over the operating budget guidance on June 24th. That's a week after the mayor's kickoff with the agencies on June 17th. We'll have a presentation for you on July 22nd, looking at the mid-year projections for 2024 this year, and then have an overview of the agency operating requests, which are due in July at your meeting on August 26th. So with that, I will stop sharing, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Dave. Let me just also add that I'll be sending out an email shortly to members of the council inviting your input into the capital budget process. Certainly, obviously interested in any projects in your districts that you're particularly want to see reflected in the executive budget, but also always welcome suggestions for where we could cut things and thus reduce debt service. So just wanted to invite you all to please scrutinize the agency requests and to send me your input. And again, I'll send out an email to that effect shortly. Are there questions for Dave on the presentation? Going once, going twice. Seeing no questions. Thank you, Dave. We have no other items on tonight's agenda, so a motion to adjourn would be in order.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to adjourn. Is there any objection to recording unanimous vote in favor of adjournment? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Have a good evening.